Okay, let's try a something from nothing video again. I haven't done those for a while, but I have some pieces of, I don't know, just test papers that I've been demonstrating other types of techniques and lessons on. This one was from the Brayering, I believe, where I'm just, I just tested this impression out that has a lot of surface area on glossy cardstock here just for the sake of showing what can be done with a brayer, in terms of large stamps, again, with a lot of surface area and getting a clean impression. But I wasn't thinking about using this in a scene, I mean, something that's, where you have a couple stamps like this, configured in a perpendicular fashion from one another. I mean, this is not an ideal starting point for maybe a traditional composition. I don't know, maybe if it's in some kind of alternate world where you have these skewed types of things, surreal, maybe, but it's not something that I would really want to start off with at all, okay? So let's see what we can do here, in making something from nothing. Okay, now we have this right here, so I'm thinking about doing a transition type of element in here. And again, I'm not thinking that this is going to be some sort of, grand masterpiece, but one of the lessons about kind of the something from nothing videos, and I've done a few of those at this point in time, is just, you try to just maximize the potential of an existing, I don't know, piece in whatever state it is, okay? Now, this one's starting off as, I don't know, structurally as bad, I think, as any that I've ever done. The other ones, I don't know, they were just kind of scrap papers with a couple things stamped on it, or just some color swatches in the background that I had to work around. But this one is a really hard set structural problem. And we'll see what we can pull out from it. We'll see if we can do something decent, at least, okay? Alright, so adding some more of that in there. I just inked up about, I don't know, roughly half of it. Kind of blotted off the edges a little bit with a paper towel before I made my impression to hopefully get that to merge in there. I mean, see, those rock things don't even match up very well, right? Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm going to try to stay with this kind of, I don't know, I guess it would be kind of like a fisheye format, so like if it was in photography, it'd be like a really super wide-angle lens. And again, it'll be something similar to some scenes that I've done in the past if you watched these videos showing kind of a worm's eye view of kind of looking up at the trees like you're laying down and there's trees going back into perspective. Again, this isn't ideal though because these are at a 90-degree angle right here. What we want is this kind of curving type of circular type of arrangement of these trees right here. So we'll see what we can do. I don't know. It's definitely an awkward starting point, okay? Now, do I go like this, or do I go like... let's not make it too extreme. This isn't the ideal one to do this with either, because the trees are, going straight across. It's from a certain vantage point, so nothing's going off into perspective. So unlike, a single tree or, a small grouping of trees, you can angle them appropriately for a single vanishing point, okay? But we don't have that to work with here, so let's see what we can do, all right? Okay, let's just make this a nighttime sky. I'm going to do this scene fairly quickly, try to at least. Okay, so we have this first row of trees here, and it's really too dense too. I don't like that aspect of it. But let's just see where we get to, okay? Pine row, colored with a really dark blue. It's Prussian blue, but you can use something like a navy blue, anything like that. Wiping this off on the bottom, really wiping off a pretty good amount of ink, and transitioning it up. I'm taking off a little bit less ink as I move up here. Until I get about halfway, and then it's just going to be solid ink up there, okay? So we have dark to light when I make my impression because it's going from wet to dry, okay? And let's add in some trees in the background, okay? Like that. Maybe that was a little bit too dark. Prussian blue is really dark. Maybe I should go with the one a little bit lighter, but I do love Prussian blue. Let me take off a little bit more ink. Okay, so I took off a pretty good amount from right here to here. But the thing is you want to kind of transition it so it's not just ink and then nothing, you know what I mean? You want it to go from kind of darker impressions up top and for it to transition into lighter or nothing down below, okay? So you see that right there? Just a little bit of transitioning. If I stamp it up a little bit higher, you'll be able to see more of that transition. Okay, but that's a little bit more like it. Let me do the same thing again here. Quite a bit. I'll go all the way up to the top there. Okay. And then see, I'm changing this angle right here. I'm trying to really try to force the issue here, okay? So like this, I kind of came up here a little bit more to hopefully kind of, you know, round this out a little bit more where that kind of perpendicular conflict there in terms of the angles are really coming into play the hardest, you know. It's these two areas right here. There wasn't very much room to alter the you know, the configuration of those visually. But here's what I'm thinking of, or hoping for at least. See, there's these trees that are coming like this. They don't have a single vanishing point, but like I said, we're just going to work with what we can work with. Okay, I just put another one right up here. I'm hoping that colors will kind of eradicate a lot of the perspective conflicts that are happening within the scene. You know what I mean? This really shows up, and it would never look like that, you know, with trees going kind of back into a single vanishing point. But if you kind of decrease the contrast between these trees and the background, those angles aren't going to be quite as obvious. So we're kind of doing this. It's kind of like a distraction exercise. That's what I do a lot in my scenes, okay? It's not just something like this. I mean, if I have some kind of weak area, it's not just, although it's certainly a tool, kind of just stamping something over it and blocking it out. What I might do is I might darken something, or I might put some highlights somewhere else to where I'm just kind of drawing someone's attention away from those weaker points, and it just becomes something, you know, far less significant. And I don't have to really worry about it or think about it from a visual perspective, you know what I mean? I don't have to, in other words, it's your creation here. This is kind of like your stage. And if you put a spotlight over here on something, then, you know, that's where the audience's attention is going to go to, okay? Let's say, I guess it would be akin to, you know, it's performing night. Oh my gosh, you know, there was something that happened over there. You just dim lights on that side of the stage and brighten the lights over there, and that's where the attention will go to. So that's the way I see a lot of this type of strategy, I guess. Visual strategy happening. Okay, this is a cloud. I've really wiped off the edges here, because where I wipe it off around the perimeter, it'll transition very gracefully into the images that I'm stamping it over, okay? Just the simple wipe off is a really great strategy, okay? If you want your imagery to harmonize, just, you know, or, you know, it gives it a kind of a head start in order for image blending harmony, okay? All right. Okay, see that right there? And see, I'm kind of working in multiple values right here. It goes dark, less dark. That Prussian blue is still pretty dark. And then more of a medium blue. And this is the Memento Bahama. Any kind of, I don't know, what is that? cobalt blue, medium blue, something like that, if you're doing blue tones. This is going to be some kind of nighttime scene. I figured I'd go fairly dark on this one, just because I want to eradicate a lot of the compositional problems that I was dealing with, to begin with here. Okay, so everything here is just kind of this repetition of this kind of pattern right here. It's kind of starting to get a little bit more rounded like that. And let's see if we can really reinforce all this with our coloring strategies. Okay, one of the videos that I just did was this video on household items. Let's just use this sponge right here. It's a horrible, horrible sponge. This was one that we were ready to, toss in the trash, and I thought, okay, I've been talking about alternative application tools lately, especially with the Colorbox Stylus tool, my favorite tool of all time in terms of color applications, being no longer available. So kind of going back to innovation, maybe, and that's never a bad thing. Okay, now I have a little bit of this Memento blue from this video that I just posted yesterday, or I guess I just posted it today. I shot it last night, though. Okay. Adding some ink to this, okay? And what I'm doing is we'll just add this down here, like so. If you want to leave some of that lighting on some of those rocks, see, it looks like the lighting is hitting the rocks just because we don't color it in, okay? I might do that, but on a lot of this, I want to darken it in pretty good because I really want to alleviate, again, some of those compositional angle problems that are happening within here, okay? Alright, you can never tell me that you can't find your, now you can't do some kind of scene because you don't have the right applicator, okay? Well, you can, but this is like the worst sponge ever. I don't know, maybe it works better than a brand new one. I haven't tried that yet. It's not the scouring side, it's the, just the softer sponge side. I put a little water on it just because this is like so crunchy, crispy here, but I don't know, this is, this sponge right here really gives it kind of a wide amount of coverage. Maybe it's not great for a really small scene, I don't know. You can always just use a smaller bit of it, like this. You just kind of squeeze it down. If you want to use a wider one, just kind of come back in here. It's really ergonomic, though, these types of applicators like this. Okay, you want to get a little bit darker, then you can kind of tap it in like this. You don't have to wipe it like that. This works fine on matte paper, too. Matte cardstock is probably the best, just in terms of, I don't think anyone's using, like, Bristol board or something like that to stamp on, but as far as, like, papers go, cardstocks are really great. They're coated, and they hold the inks really well. Alright, that's our first color right there. You see what's kind of happening right here? It's so busy in here, I don't like that. Maybe I'll kind of add a little bit more tone like that, and it'll kind of blend all that together and make it a little bit less busy. Alright, that's Memento. Let's go in with the, do I dare just make that jump to the Prussian? Why not? Okay. So that Prussian blue is pretty dark right there. So when you first start applying it, maybe use a lighter touch or something like that. Yeah, I don't know. It works pretty good. Just going in straight, okay? used to be this Popeye show on the weekends, Sundays. There was always Saturday morning cartoons, and there was no cartoons on Sundays, Sunday afternoon or whatever, kind of later morning. And there used to be this Popeye hour, and this guy named Tom Hatton, who's the host of it, used to have kids send in their squiggles, and then he would try to make, he was like a cartoonist, and he would try to make some sort of cartoon or figure, whatever, out of it. And he would open his mailbag and go into it, and he would just come up with something. It's kind of it's a good exercise. It really exercises your creativity and kind of a philosophy, and just starting with something and simply working on it and trying to make the best of it. And in the meantime, in having to kind of deal with certain types of obstacles, it kind of it often develops some of the better techniques out there in terms of what we were talking about before, kind of attention, manipulation. I don't know, is that the right word? Manipulate usually means something bad, but kind of, it just, in terms of strengthening something, or it's more of, I don't know, kind of a diversion type of thing. And you often learn quite a bit from that. Or if you're starting off with, scratch and you can just do anything. I mean, there's, that's what I do most of the time. But, I don't know, there's a different, maybe almost a different feeling upon the completion of something that you had to kind of think about during the process. And, when I'm dealing with these issues like this, it's not like I'm constantly thinking. I'm kind of worn out at the end of it. It's just, I just kind of work on whatever I'm working on or whatever. And then, I don't know, there is that extra element of, I don't know, it's like brain activity or something like that. That, I don't know, there's something fulfilling about it. There's maybe the extra layer of fulfillment that you might kind of experience. And let's say you don't achieve, something in the end of what you may have hoped for, but I don't even think about stuff like that when I'm working on something. I'm just thinking about, I am applying black now, and I'm just thinking about that shadow. I'm not thinking about some kind of end result, okay? Now, I might be making my assessments, like, once in a while, like, how are things going, but not really. But kind of in the end, I don't know, there is something kind of nice about that. And like I said, when we have to think about things or deal with adversity, that's often, in terms of art, I believe that's when a lot of innovation comes about. And again, it's an exercise in creativity. And I don't know, things can kind of be somewhat of like a metaphor. All right, so anyway, you can see what I mean by kind of going around on those edges right there. This still feels real kind of, perpendicular, maybe a little bit too much. Let me see if I can kind of round it off even more. I'll try to get rid of some of the highlights here so that they're not quite so even with those other ones like that. Maybe I'll try to come up with some additional reinforcements of this kind of real super wide angle type of idea. I'm thinking about maybe the Leafless Pine, maybe. I know it doesn't look too bad. I mean, it's just using, a lot of lighting fundamentals, from what I've done in the past, just kind of around a very, very awkward foundation, compositional foundation. Let's blend this out a little bit more, get really dark right here. if you kind of darken in these angles like this, I believe that would help to eradicate that 90 degrees. The 90 degrees is being created by those two initial Lakeside Reflections Lg, but it's also created by having the the physical page as a 90-degree angle. So you see these two areas coming together like that created another angle that reinforces this angle right here. So having this angle right here was really creating that strong additional visual right here of a repeated element in terms of this kind of framing type of thing. So this is what I usually do in my scenes. I create a strong vignette, so you go dark in the four corners. Now this one right here, I'm not going to do that corner because it's so close to the light, and that's in the clouds right there, so it's just naturally lighter. Plus I did the kind of the rule of thirds type of thing, so this is kind of sitting, rule of thirds. It would have been really more down there, but we didn't have room, so I kind of bumped it up a little bit higher. But you see all this is kind of broken down into thirds like that, and there's your light right there. Okay, so you don't have to make this as dark as this or this or this because it's next to the light. But you still get that structuring of it, though. The compositional rule of thirds kind of going in there. And you don't have to do the rule of thirds every time. I don't, do that. I do it most of the time, but, there are other exceptions. Okay, so we have that. Let's see if I have my Leafless Pine tree, if I want to do that. I don't know. Maybe that might cause a little bit of a strain. No, I think I need it. I don't know if it's one of those things you'll find you kind of contemplating in these videos all the time. And I might say the first inclination is always correct, but it often is. And if it's not, giving it a try is something that I would usually recommend. Why not? You know what I mean? It's not like if you stamp something out and maybe it looked better without it, it's not the end of the world, right? And it's usually not something where, a scene is good, and then suddenly if you add one little element, the scene is now not good at all, you know what I mean? It's not the polar extremes, It's like, maybe that would look better or slightly better without it, that type of thing. But you gave it a try, and then you exercised, confidence and, this willingness to experiment in the name of, potential improvement. And that's really great. Right? Okay, so let's add in some additional pigment ink. Okay, we have our lighting up there, and I think we can enhance this type of light throughout the scene here. I'm going to do that before I stamp out this tree over the top, because I'm going to stamp this tree in a really dark color, in a dark style of ink, in the Versafine Black. My table here is full of crumbs from using this super, dry, really bad sponge. But using that sponge was kind of for a purpose, it's just to show you that, you can really kind of experiment around with things. Maybe I should do those light beams coming out of here. Okay, I think that will help, actually. Well, let's do this first. Now let's do the light beams first. there are many things that just are not planned or in my videos, and something like this is especially true. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit of a tiny little vanishing point here just with my little gel pen. Okay. And that will be my vanishing point for my emanating light beams. Okay. I've done this a lot in my videos. You can check those out. Okay. I just have two pieces of copy paper, and I have a cotton sponge here, okay? Cotton ball, sorry. And I'm going to put these two pieces of paper right to that little point there, okay? It's like a little arrow. And that is going to be the emanation point for what they call crepuscular rays. It's those light beams that are emanating from, some source of light. It doesn't always have to be the sun, could be anything. Okay? And what I'm doing is I'm kind of adding a little bit more by the source of light, right? That's where it's brightest, and I kind of have it dissipate down below, so I'm using a little bit, less tapping pressure. I might have the beam a little bit harder on one side. Okay? Like that. Alright, I think this is going to be a really strong distractionary visual for that horrific type of starting point, right? I mean, they're just so dominant a visual. Okay, let's go. I try to vary these two. I try to have some a little bit lighter than the other ones, and I feel that that lends itself to a richer surface overall when you have variation happening within a scene. And, I don't know, I think it looks a little bit more realistic. Try to have some of these beams a little bit more narrow than others. I mean, if you want a real graphic statement where things are, kind of this explosive type of, visual, then, then you can really emphasize that by having, going for symmetry, within each ray, or, you can have them much brighter, or something like that. And that's fine too. Okay? And you just kind of keep adding it in. If you add one or two beams, it doesn't look right. It looks kind of weird. So you have to add, a few in terms of, how it would naturally look. If those beams were indeed in that location and doing this type of effect. Okay. Okay, see, I'm really adding it closer to that area up there. Okay. Sometimes it doesn't go on very smoothly when you first do a tapping of it, so you just kind of keep blending that out. You might get a little chunk of, pigment ink here or there. Alright, now that one was really light, maybe too light, but I don't know, we'll see. We'll just add on a few more. See that one right there? See how light it is? Okay. Alright, let's go right across that real problem area of that hard perpendicular angle, that 90-degree angle right there in the corner. Okay, I might do a couple beams. We'll see how it goes. I always kind of start off when I ink this up. I'm inking it up, then I'll start up here because it's at its wettest point. I don't want to start down there, in some of the areas that are going to be darker. Let me get this ink out here. Okay, now when I start going in the darker area, I'm kind of using less pressure. I'm just barely touching it. So I'm going to go harder up there to squeeze off more ink, and then I will work it down like this. Alright, this is one of those things where this is kind of serving as a beam, but it's also serving to distract. this is one of those things too, where this is, this beam is somewhat, it's a foreground element, okay, because it looks like it's in front of all those things like that. So, what you're doing is you're bearing kind of the weaker elements within the piece, which again was that, the angle that we started off with, okay? All right, now I went with a pretty strong beam. Maybe we'll go with a weak one right here next to it. So I'll just do like 1 or 2 passes. I need to blend this out though, so I am tapping it, but I'm tapping it very lightly. Okay. Add a little bit more towards the emanation point. Okay, there we go, like that. It's kind of coming together, right? And it's, that angle in there is becoming a little bit less prominent, I guess. Let's come with another real thin beam right in here, I think. So now right there, it's like a hairline beam like that. But now, that one stands out a little bit because it is the only one of that thickness in this whole scene. So why don't we add that another one of those somewhere else, maybe to complement it on the other side. You can even do it right over the top of an existing beam. You can do a thin one over the top of this one just by adding this in like this. Let's do it here. So I'll go to a little bit of a thicker one. And add that light right across there. So it's thin over thick, okay? It's not supposed to be the same beam, but just kind of a thinner one right over the top. These things are supposed to be multi-dimensional. It's not like two-dimensional. It's two-dimensional, but we want to give the illusion of 3 dimensions, so like that. Show you right here. See this right there? Okay, now, let's say, speaking of dimensions, let's do this right here too. Why don't we have some light back here going into those trees, but let's say it's not coming out to the front. Let's say it's going behind these trees. So you can have some beams like this in the landscape, again, talking about those 3 dimensions, and I'll have it just go right down to that tree line, okay? And we'll need to do this a couple times because it'll look strange, maybe just ending right there in one spot. Sometimes if you do the full extension, the beam coming all the way out, it can look a little, even though it's coming from the background to the foreground because of this, emanation point, it can look a little bit flatter than having, additional beams in the background. Some more distant ones like this. Okay, so see this right here? So you have this beam kind of going right here, and I put a little bit in there, but for the most part, it's kind of going behind those trees. Okay. Now see over here, and okay, this is what I was saying too about if you have all the beams kind of coming out like that, it can get a little bit repetitious. So maybe something, you're thinking about adding one over here, but you're not thinking. You're thinking if it comes all the way over here, maybe it's too much. So you can just come into here if you want to. Or you can do it. You can come in to here. Maybe you can have it lighter too or something. It's all up to you. There's different ways to do things. And varying things is often a really good way to to promote richness in terms of that variation, okay? Contrasts, variation, okay? So this is not hard concepts. You just make some beams wide, some beams narrow, some beams a little bit more opaque with more ink, and some beams lighter with less ink, okay? It's the same exact technique. All you're doing is just going wide, narrow, thicker, or thin, Okay, so see how that one just kind of disappears right there? It's very visible, but it's pretty effective. It's like shining right on that rock too. In this case, that was just kind of by. I wasn't thinking about that when I did it. You don't have to go in, kind of knowing everything. It's just like, oh, okay, that was like a happy little accident or whatever. Oh my gosh, someone said I sound like Bob Ross. Love him, you know what I mean? But I think that's what he used to say, happy little accidents. Right? I don't know. I haven't seen one of those videos in, I think, since I was in maybe middle school or something like that. Okay, so anyways, here's another one right here. Okay, now these beams, I can just tell they're drying darker than what they look like when I first apply them. So if you want to add a little bit more ink, you can. You let this kind of set up here a little bit and then just adjust accordingly. But okay, so have we gotten rid of a lot of that problem area right here? We've made it really dark, and then we put this beam right over the top of it, to hopefully be, somewhat of a distractionary element into the scene. I think I want to go for another beam up here. There's this kind of strong line that I want to try to get rid of a little bit, or just not get rid of, but make it less prominent, okay. It looks a little bit bright now, but it's really mellowing out a lot, as it kind of dries. All right, so that's our light beams right there. I'm kind of looking at it through my camera viewfinder. Sometimes that reveals, because I can see things much smaller, so sometimes that reveals some other things that I could potentially be doing. Let's do this. Let's make this one a little bit more opaque. And let's transition this one a little bit more. This beam is really, really subtle throughout most of it. Let's make it a little bit slightly more prominent. Let's still have it fairly light, but let's taper it. Okay, there we go. That's a little bit better, right? See how it tapers like that? Now that's going to get lighter too, but okay, now once I do that, what I do is I take my pigment ink and I'll just, from the source of emanation for this light, I'd like to add some additional pigment ink in there just to kind of mellow out those beams a little bit too, and to carry out that same sort of soft texture right into the clouds that are next to the light source, okay? So it makes sense, right? You lighten the objects that are closest to the light source, okay? It kind of gives them something in common with that light. That white paper, it represents the light. So you bring that white element into objects that are reflecting that light. And again, it's not light, it's white. So white pigment ink is reflecting the white paper, but it just represents light, okay? Okay, now, all right. Now I don't always have that just as just for elements next to the light source, what I like to do is I like to have some additional atmosphere down here, and I think it would work pretty good to add maybe a little bit of this foggy, softer element, like around some of these rocks. Doesn't it look like it's kind of glowing a little bit now, too? See, like that? I think it looked okay without it, too, but see that fog down there like that? It kind of gives it that nice soft element. I like it crisp, too. On this one, it's hard to tell which I like more. But I think let's put a little bit in there. And then I'll leave some of it just nice and crisp, okay? Alright, so some of those background trees, I can put some of this on those background trees, the blue ones, the Prussian blue ones. I don't put it over all of them. I kind of like to oscillate it a little bit softer and lighter against crisp and darker. Okay. And again, when you have that little bit of variation, it adds up to potential richness, you know. Okay. Well, the beams I just forgot all about in terms of a potential addition here, but I think that really helped out in terms of eradication visually of the weakest element in the scene, which was the hard 90-degree angle of that. But see, when I look at this now, I'm not necessarily thinking about that hard 90-degree thing, or the fact that all those trees don't, you know, they don't share that same vanishing point like that. They're pretty close, but definitely not in the Lakeside Reflections stamp that were initially utilized in there. It's because they're so, the contrast has been really cut down on those, and then we've run so many other elements in the form of these beams right across the front of it. The coloring also helped a little bit, but you know, when you have something that powerful in terms of a visual with those beams, everything else gets pushed back visually, but also, you know, visually comes without our attention, so I'm not paying attention to, you know, this hard edge like that. Okay, so anyways, something from nothing. Very fun to do, and I don't know, like I said, it's just kind of an exercise in, oh, I don't know, creativity and innovation, etc., etc. And I don't know, it's just a good thing to do, be it whether you're starting off with a horrible kind of foundation or just simply running into potential things along the way. Oh my gosh, I didn't even remember. I get distracted by myself in these videos. I have this other stamp here. Should we do this in here? Yeah, let's go ahead and do it, right? I was talking about doing it all that time. This happens all the time in videos, you know, I get done with it and it's like, I forgot to use the gel pen or something like that, you know? Okay, now, what I'm going to do with this one, see this tree right here? I have it. I'm aiming it right at my vanishing point, no matter where I stamp it, okay? Alright, let's go like this. It'd be funny if, somewhere along the line it's like, oh my god, I messed up! I'm trashing it, right? I'm just joking, but you know, from doing this type of element in here. Okay. Actually, it's another type of element that has kind of lessened the starting visual of the, you know, the problematic element. Okay. I think it looks pretty good, though, you know. Yeah, this piece is a lot more powerful than maybe I thought it would be. Okay, so 3 of these are going in like that. Okay. It's a little unbalanced here, so let's, you know, I'm going to add a smaller one down here. Maybe, well, let's go for the smaller one. No, I could just use this one and stamp it lower, okay, but since I happen to have this here, let's just use the same mount here. This is not the ideal mount for this since it's so huge, but Versafine, don't use this Versafine for photo stamping. If you watch my previous video, it just never dries on here. On glossy, it takes a little bit of time to dry, but it does dry. At least on this one. Glossy photo paper? No, glossy cardstock, yeah. Okay, there's another tree over here. Let's go with another one. Let's go, let's say right here. I don't need a ruler or something like that. Just, you know, just eyeball it, you know, going up to kind of that vanishing point. You'll be fine. You can go with for other leaves too, other types of foliage in here too. Might be kind of interesting. Do I want to do it? Okay, let's do this. I'm going hiking in the mountains on Tuesday coming up here, and it kind of reminds me of it. There's a lot of dead trees up there from years of drought in California and the bark beetle destruction, you know. Because the trees can't develop enough sap to fight them off, so there's a whole big forest, you know, really thinned out with the trees. And speaking of that, when I used to do a lot of summit hiking, you know, going for the summits on a lot of hikes in the local mountains, there's always like so many bushes. A lot of times I would go off trail. I find kind of going off trail and looking for new areas is often kind of the thing I'm interested in the most. It's kind of like stamping. It's kind of like a metaphor for that, right? Okay. Okay, see this, adding this foreground element in there like that. You didn't really, it's not real prominent. But here it is, we're just adding another layer on top of something. So we went for color, we went for light beams, and we're going for some additional imagery. You know, so when you have all these different types of things that are closer to the viewer's eye, it really can bury underneath visually thing that you might not have liked so much. And it doesn't need to cover it up completely. It's just, you just kind of push it to the background a little bit. That's where I always kind of recommend to people, you know. I know people tell me that, you know, they have pieces that they're working on, but, you know, they're thinking it really should go to the trash. I always recommend kind of just working with it, and just putting something else in their foreground. And again, not to just bury the problem element in it, but it just, you push everything back visually the more elements you have that are closer, in theory, to the viewer's eye. Okay? Alright, so anyways, a whole additional grouping of elements in here. Okay, like that. Yeah, I like it. I like the additional trees in here. I think there's a sense of drama, and of course, it is a little bit more from a spatial sense deeper now, like that. I find it kind of interesting. So, well, that's fun. Okay, I did that. I wasn't going to do so much on here, but let's see. Where is my white Miaosun pen? Okay, acrylic pen like this. Let's add a little bit of highlighting in here, specific highlighting. Put a few little dots on some of these rocks, like it's capturing some of that light. Okay, kind of on the top surfaces. If it's a light rock, if it's a dark rock, don't put it on there because you're saying that no light is hitting it. Okay. See those little rocks back there, really subtle. Okay, I like the scene. Like I said, and I was just hoping that I can kind of eradicate that big problem area. That, from a compositional standpoint, this is by far, at least from what I can remember, the worst starting point for any scene that I've ever done. Yeah, kind of hard, perpendicular, stamping of that element in there was not good. All right, I think that's all I'll do right here. Yeah, real dreamy, I think, in terms of a piece, don't you think? All right. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly had a good time on it. Like I said, there's a slightly different feel to the finishing of this piece. I guess what it is, when you're starting off with something that's just not ideal, or you're having to think about things and compensate, you're doing things that you normally, probably wouldn't do in the general type of sense. Now, this is a composition that I've done before a few times, but maybe, I don't know, I think there's a certain density of these trees in here, or something, the beam light is slightly different, because this just is just a slightly different look than what I've achieved when things are ideal, meaning, starting off with a blank slate. So, I don't know, I mean, I'm not quite sure what it is, that's a little bit different in this piece. Maybe you can tell me, but I don't know, it just feels a little bit differently. And I'm looking, one of the things too, I told people I'm not really someone that's kind of like destination focused. I'm focused in on the process, but when you finish with something and you're looking at something different too, there's a certain type of reward in that too. You know what I mean? You're just treated to something new or slightly different in this case. And that's always fun to see. You always want to, be able to see something new, and it's kind of fun when it was just kind of developed by your own hand. So play around with things, stick with things, and always recommend don't give up on things during the process. Even if you get through and it's like, okay, there's certain other elements in there, you probably learn something along the way that you wouldn't normally have had all things been ideal. Or just repetitious, from things you've done before, comfortable. Okay, so anyways, thanks again for watching. If you like this video, maybe hit the like button and subscribe. Okay, thanks for tuning in.